In this movie I'm going to talk about creating new plants and editing existing ones. And a prerequisite for this movie is that you will have watched the movie on how to add favorite files to the resource browser, because I will be accessing some favorite files that we have added here. Essentially, you can convert any Vectorworks object or objects into a plant. This can be a simple thing like a circle with a variety of different fills. It can be a polyline. It can be basically any 2D geometry. You could also scan a bitmap image and use that as the basis of the 2D plant graphic. So really anything that you can visualize and draw or import, you can use to create a plant from. The process of creating a plant is very simple. You select the geometry that you want, and I'll just duplicate this and move it off to the side, and we'll use this in the first example. You select the geometry that you want for the plant, you go to the landmark menu and you choose Create New Plant, and here you'll be asked to give the plant symbol a name, and that's the name that will appear in the resource browser here. And we've got various options for it here. Let's begin with the plant data. So what we can do is to access the plant database and choose which plant we're going to use. And what we might do is to switch this to shrub and just pick one of these at random, maybe a slightly bigger one. Yeah, that looks good. So you'll see that once we've chosen a species, then that information has been entered in here. And if we now go to the insertion of the schedule options, you can see that the Latin name has been copied from the plant database, the common name, and we can also now give this a name that will appear in the resource browser. Now you may like to use Latin names for the name in the resource browser, or common name or something. It doesn't matter, but I'm going to use the Latin name, and so I have copied this from here using copy from the keyboard, and I'm going to paste that in here using paste from the keyboard, and that's going to be the plant symbol name. Now the plant tag ID is what will appear beside the plant on the drawing, and so it's quite common to use an abbreviation of the Latin name, so let's use ACCO. If we want to put in a schedule size, price code, any comments, we can do that as well. So we have the plant data done, we have the schedule done. How do we want it to render? Do we want to add an additional outline to it? You can see here we've got some extra outlines. Do we want to have any shadows in a plan view? So we can use document units, page units, or a factor of the plant height for the shadow that we want to create. So let's just use page units, and we'll say 5 millimeters. The angle is 135. The fill is going to be a solid color. This can be opaque as well. So there's lots of options for doing this. I'm not really going to go into those too much, but you can have that on by default. We can also mass plants by default, which means that when they overlap, they will join together. Again, we're going to leave that off. And then finally, we have the insertion options, which are the height, spread, and spacing. Now, if we just go back to the plant data, you'll see that this information here has come from the plant data here. You can see height and spread there, and that's conveniently shown to you here, so you've got some idea of how big this plant should be. And a spread of maybe 3 meters is probably appropriate, and a height of probably about the same, 3 meters. And if we were going to put these in a row, then I guess we'd probably put them at about 2.5 meter centers. So essentially we've created the plant. Let's click OK. And you'll see this is now taken on the attributes that we've given it. It's grown in size a bit because this was about had a diameter of about 2.3, 2.4 meters, and we specified this as 3 meters, so it's a bit bigger. You can see it's got the outlines around it. You can see it's now got the plant ID, it's got the symbol name, and it's just in a single placement mode. So there's a plant, how to create a plant from scratch on the drawing and draw some information from the Australian plant database. So the other thing that you quite commonly want to do is to modify plants that are already in Landmark, and we have added these plant objects and plant object 02. So let's look at this and expand the symbols plugin objects and pick a plant here that might be vaguely like something that we might want to use. So scrolling down, so let's say this is the one that we want to use, or perhaps this one here. We'll choose the low shrub. I'm just going to drag that into the drawing, and so we've now got this in the drawing, and I might just move the tag up here. So we can now edit this and give it a species and tweak how it appears in 2D. And you can do this by either right-clicking, or if you're on a Mac and you don't use right-clicking, you can press the Control key and left-click, or you can just double-click the plant and this dialog will appear. And let's choose to edit the 2D graphics. Click OK, and we'll now go into an editing environment, and we can zoom in a bit and see what we've got here. And essentially, if we deconstruct this, we've got that green filled polygon. It's only got 16 vertices. It has a gradient fill to it. You can see that here. We have an outline as a separate object, and then we have these little bloom objects here. Now it's worth noting that all of these objects are actually in classes that allow you to turn them on and off. So if we take this, you'll see that this is in the class Plants Components Outline. This is in the class Plants Component Color Fill, and these will be in the Plant Components Bloom class. Now it's advisable to use those classes when you're constructing your plants from scratch, or if you add geometry to the plant, consider how you want that to work. I'll just undo to put that back in there. So let's say for this plant you wanted to change that green color, the color of the gradient. So here we can do that via the resource browser, and let's say you wanted a darker color in there. So we've changed the color of the gradient, and let's also say that you wanted to randomly change, and I'm holding the shift key down as I click on a selection of these, change that to something different. So when you're done editing, you can press the Exit Plant button here, and now the plant will have taken on those new characteristics. So that's editing the 2D plant graphic. Then if you wanted to attach species information to this, then you could click the Plant Settings button, and in the definition we can choose it there and click Edit Definition, and here we can do what we did a moment ago with the other plant. Look at the plant data, and there's no plant data in there, so we can go Get Plant Data, and we were looking at shrubs before, so let's say it's a callistemon, click OK. We can then go to the Schedule tab and we can change the symbol name. So we'll change this to, I'm using copy, paste that in there, and we'll call this CAVILJ, or whatever you want it to be called. Under insertion options, we can then adjust the spread. It's not bad, but let's say we want it to be 1200, and the height to be 1.4 meters. Notice that I can use something other than millimeters if I type the M there, and the spacing we're going to put in at 1 meter. And so we can tweak anything else that we want to here, and once we're done we can click OK and OK again, and you'll see that this plant has now taken on the characteristics that we just gave it. So that's how you can create a plant. That's how you can edit a plant. Now there's one other thing that's quite important here, or two other things I want to mention. And I'll go back to the plant that we've already created to describe this. Before I do, I'm just going to edit this plant setting in the render tab here. I'm going to set this to no outline. So essentially we're only getting the information that we put in the plant definition. Right, so let's go ahead and edit this. Double click, choose to edit the 2D graphic, and the first thing that I think we should do is to put this into the appropriate class, because we didn't do that when we originally created, and that should be in Plant Component Color Fill. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is to draw some lines in here, so let's go ahead and do that. And those lines I want to put into a class as well, so I'll select all the lines, hold the Shift key, deselect this, and then put the lines into the Plant Component Interior Line Work class. And we'll go, yes, please use the graphic attributes. I'll explain that in a moment. And finally I want to create an outline for this, because it may be that in the drawing we want to turn off the color fill. I can do this by duplicating the outline that's here. Edit, duplicate, and just while that's offset there, I will set the fill to none, and let's then go ahead and put that in the plant's component outline class. And again it will ask us, do we want to use the graphic attributes? We go yes, and you see that the color changed there. Let's go ahead and just snap that onto there. Now the object that's at the back in this little 2D drawing here is this one here. That was the first object we drew. The next object we drew was the lines, and the final one was the outline here, and you need to make a note of that. Now while we're in here, let's just do look at the classes. I can come up here and click this button here. That will open the classes dialog, and you'll see that some of the classes have a Y beside them. Y means that it's using the graphic attributes of the class. In other words, the class is controlling the look of the object rather than the settings here in the attributes palette. The one we are interested in is the outline, and you can see here that the outline is set to 0.7. Now we might think, that's a bit thick, or I'd like to change the color of that, and this will change every outline in the drawing that has used this class. So let's go ahead and edit that, and we'll set it back to 0.5, and maybe we just want the color not to be quite so black, so we'll set it to gray 80%. Click OK, OK, and you see that that just got toned down a bit there and made a bit thinner. Alright, so let's exit the plant now and take a look at the control that we've now got over this plant by showing and hiding classes. So let's turn off the color fill, and you can see that the color fill disappeared out of this, the interior line work, and finally the outline. Now obviously the plant's completely disappeared, so you wouldn't turn all of these off. So that's why it's useful to use the classes, because you can change the look of your drawing very quickly. Now the second thing that is important to note is when you are massing plants. So let's go ahead and place some of these plants in the drawing using the poly edge spaced mode. I'll just draw a line down here, double click, and probably I need to change this spacing a little bit. Let's change it to 2 meters so that they are actually overlapping. There we go. Now when I turn on mass plants here, you can see that the line work, the interior line work disappeared, and what we ended up here with is the green fill from the plant. And what is determining what appears here is whatever is the backmost object in the drawing. And remember we noted that the backmost object in the plant definition was the green fill. So let's go in and change that and then look at the effect that it has on this. So double click this again, edit 2D graphics, and there's our outline, plant components outline. You can see it has no fill, so I'm going to send this to the back. I can do that using the modify menu, send to back. Now in case you don't understand what sending to back means, I can explain it quite easily. Let me just draw a couple of simple objects. I take the rectangle tool, I draw a rectangle. That object is behind, this object is behind this object. So this is the stacking order. Okay, these objects are all in the same plane, but this one was drawn first, so it gets obscured by anything that gets drawn afterwards. Now I can artificially change that order using that send command. So if I use send to back, then this object will get sent right to the back, or I can send it just back one level using send back or send forward. So that's what we've done with the outline. We've sent the outline to the back, so it's the backmost object in the plant definition. Let's click exit plant, and we'll just regenerate this now, turn on mass plants, and now you can see that what's defining the plant is the backmost object in the plant, which is the outline that we had.